and welcome to this edition of Coffee and Conversation. Hi, I'm Eric Crema. I'm glad to have in the studio with me Donnie Little and Dave Wilson, both of TILA Mortgage. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming to the studios here. Feels odd coming in, what with all this COVID going on. To be back in the studio feels really good, and I'm glad that this is one of our first interviews back, because this is something that actually on the way in, I was talking to a coworker. She says, "What are you doing here in the studios?" And I said, I've got this great interview coming up with TILA Mortgage. I'm going to learn all about reverse mortgages. She's about my age, and she goes, "I'm thinking about that." And I said, me too. There's a lot of retirement type stuff I'm thinking about, and I know just enough to be dangerous. So I said, I'm going to get you a copy of this audio because I think it'll help you like it'll help me figure it out. But let's introduce both of you a little bit here to the audience. Donnie, you have a background as a financial planner, right?
That's right.
Okay, so how does a financial planner make that transition and say, you know what, I'm going to work with TILA Mortgage and I'm going to start working on these reverse mortgages?
Well, I'll tell you, I had so many clients in the past, mostly a lot of Boeing retirees and such, and this may come as a surprise, but not everybody comes out of retirement, with $1 million in their 401k and the pension and Social Security. And sometimes things don't always go as planned. And, I always liked reverse mortgages and such, but I just saw so many of my clients that could benefit from this when I saw how much access to home equity could help them through their retirement. I just thought I just have to do this.
Well, and I know from our emails back and forth, you're really passionate about it, and in particular, the circumstances that people can find themselves in. And we'll talk more about that a little later in the show, because that's a big part of, I think, why people are investigating reverse mortgage to see if it's right for them. Dave, you too really took a kind of a different route into the mortgage industry, being a former CPA, numbers guy, right?
That's right.
So how does that make you, I'm wondering, kind of uniquely qualified to help people out with reverse mortgages?
Well, you said it. I'm a numbers guy. I was intrigued by the concept of reverse mortgages, both as a way to help people and as a financial planning tool. When I worked as a CFO or CPA in my previous roles, one of the most crucial requirements for me in those roles was being able to relay and explain complex financial concepts or accounting concepts to different audiences, whether it was investors or bankers or customers or employees. And my role now as a loan originator is fundamentally similar to that, in that I get to explain to people this concept of a reverse mortgage, which, can be confusing to people at times. So I like helping people figure out if this is the right thing for them and making it work.
That's great, especially if you can change lives that way.
Right.
And it is one of those subjects, I think, as I talk to people about it, it feels like everybody's got a different idea of what it really means. We're going to find out more about that as we talk to these two experts, folks, on this edition of Coffee and Conversations. We're going to take just a quick break here and then get right into it. So I guess I'd recommend, if you're out there listening to this and you know somebody who might want to hear it as well, send out that message and then have a piece of paper and a pen ready, because we're going to give out some information that you can then go get more information. We'll be right back in just a few minutes after this break.
If you have questions about reverse mortgages and whether they're the right option for you, please get informed before making any decision. One great way to get started is to log on to TILAmortgage.com. That's TILA Mortgage.com. And then click the Reverse Mortgage tab at the top of the page. Insurance and property taxes are borrower's responsibility. Powered by Hometown Lenders, MLS number 65084. Hometown Lenders Incorporated is an equal housing lender.
And welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. I'm Eric Crema. In the studio with me, I have Donnie Little and Dave Wilson. We're going to continue our conversation about reverse mortgages, and we very much appreciate them and the TILA Mortgage folks for setting this all up, because this is a subject matter that I'm kind of curious about, and I know a lot of my friends are, because we're about that age. We're starting to think about, okay, how are we going to do retirement? But you, listening, may already be there. And let's find out if this is maybe an option for you. I am going to give out a phone number in a little bit here, so please be ready to jot that down, because this is only a half-hour program, and this is money we're talking about. This is your livelihood, and probably your family home and things like that we're going to be talking about. It's very important, so you don't want to make a decision like this lightly. Gentlemen, let's get back into the conversation. Let's talk, though, first, Donnie, I'm going to pose this to you, a little bit about TILA Mortgage, because as I turn on my television or listen through the bands of radio out here, you hear all kinds of ads for reverse mortgages, and it's usually a 30-second, 60-second ad. And you're like, okay, what is it? I don't know if it's right for me, kind of a thing. Talk to me a little bit about TILA Mortgage and what makes them different than the competition.
Okay, thank you for the question. I would just say this, first of all, I've known Bill, the owner, for, since the early 90s. He's been a financial planning client of mine, solid guy, and invests back into the community here. Specifically to TILA and the reverse department, I would just say, whether it's Dave or I, both of us, this is all we do. You will see a lot of people out there that try and do a lot of things for a lot of people and be a jack of all trades, if you will. Again, this is all we do, and we can really give it the personal touch, and I think that's really important with a complicated, thing like a reverse mortgage.
Gotcha. And Dave, I imagine you share that sentiment because, again, it goes back to why you got into this business in the first place and wanting to help people. It seems to me, from the things you've said and from people I've talked to, that TILA is one of those companies that's sort of a special company.
Right. And we actually didn't do reverse mortgages a decade ago, even though TILA's been around almost 25 years now. There's been a lot of rule changes on it by the FHA who governs this, and once the rules changed, the product became very safe. That's one of the things we actually battle now, is people have a perception of it that comes from a bygone era that doesn't apply anymore, and they're very safe loans now. They're very regulated, and so it's nice to be able to convey that to people and show them how safe they are.
Well, I know just buying a house and making that transition or refining and things like that, it's a mountain of paperwork. And sometimes you're just sort of signing. You're hoping for the best, you add on to it now reverse mortgages. It's just like a whole nother layer of, as a homeowner, things you might have to think about. Donnie, there is some confusion about what exactly is reverse mortgages, how they work, who they're right for. Maybe you can take the first part of this question and just let's start there. Who do you think would be a prime candidate for a reverse mortgage?
Well, to start with, I would say first, obviously, you need to be 62 years of age. And just a ballpark figure would be that somewhere around 50% equity in the home, is a good gatekeeper to start with. But from that point on, I would say that, it's really a really specific, solution for everybody. And that's why you really need to specifically look at your own situation.
Yeah, so it's going to be different. Now, there's obviously some legal parameters, as you said, the age requirement, the equity, that's helpful to know, 50%. I imagine people in, say, the Seattle market here or Tacoma market, surrounding areas, they've probably seen enough appreciation in their home, particularly if it's their original home, to them, and they've had it for 30 years or so.
Right.
They probably have that equity in there. So these would probably be some of the earliest questions you're going to be asking to somebody who contacts you.
Right. And I would just say, we're in a great situation here with the appreciation we've had and the low interest rates. It's really a perfect storm, if you will, to benefit the client.
Well, we've talked about a little bit about who it's right for. Dave, maybe you can just talk a little bit more, fill in any gaps on what a reverse mortgage is. And if you know anything, maybe a little bit about the history of how it came to be or how long it's been around or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, the product's been around, I think, since the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
The FHA got involved a couple decades ago to really clean it up and make it a safe product. And the general concept of a reverse mortgage is that you have a mortgage on your home,
mm-hmm.
But unlike a regular mortgage you'd have with your bank where you make a monthly payment, the monthly payments on a reverse mortgage are optional. You can make it. There's no prepayment penalty if you do make a payment, but they're optional. So that's what really kicks it into a whole different category. And that's what helps people so much, especially seniors in retirement. They're living on Social Security. That mortgage payment could be eating, 75% of their income stream every month. If you have that payment go away via this optional element of a reverse, it gives them a lot more cash to work with. Now, the interest continues to accrue on the loan, but as Donnie just pointed out, one of the incredible opportunities right now in this marketplace is high appreciation rates on our homes and historically low interest rates. So they're really a safe loan in that standpoint. I love meeting with clients. A lot of times I'll meet with their kids, their heirs, the people that are going to inherit the house, and we'll run out some amortization tables and show them that, when mom and dad sell this house or move out or pass away in 20 years, this looks really good, so that's one part of it that is really compelling.
I've noticed at the same time that really reverse mortgages have increased in popularity, you're also seeing things where there's services that are for people who want to stay in their home, things to help them stay in their home, including contractors that will modify the home so that it's safer.
Right.
And if you have a house that you love, you've got all those memories, you've got every wall has got a picture of something that reminds you of the family and time spent. It would seem to a lot of people it's important to stay in their home. I imagine that's one of the things, Donnie, that you run into is just people say, well, is this going to help me stay in my home?
That's absolutely right, Eric. The term is called aging in place, right? I mean, generally speaking, most people don't really have this goal of going into a nursing home. Most people would like to stay in the house as long as possible, and to have access to cash to set up the home in a manner where you can stay in the home as long as possible. That's great, and not inhibit your financial lifestyle whatsoever. As most loans, when you take money out, now all of a sudden, it's just eating into my discretionary income and such, and so, that's not the case with the reverse.
This coworker I was mentioning that I spoke to before coming in the studio, we kind of were talking about all our ideas about retirement, and it's wonderful to have options, and this is just a different option, but it's going to be an option that could be exactly right for certain people. What happens, though, Dave, if you've already paid off your house and there is no mortgage? You have 100% equity.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and you might be surprised to hear that is one of the more frequent types of loans we do in the reverse world. It's called a home equity conversion mortgage.
Okay.
And that basically, the amount that they qualify for, which again is based on their age and the interest rate on the loan, dictates how much they can borrow. If they don't have a mortgage, that amount becomes a line of credit that they have for the rest of their life. So we have people being sent to us by their financial planners that use this purely as a tool, another tool in their retirement portfolio, where they have a home with, let's say someone has a $800,000 home and they don't have a mortgage on it. Maybe they're in their 70s or 80s, and now they've got a multi-$100,000 line of credit that gets set up via the reverse mortgage. Just like you would think with any reverse mortgage, the payments are optional. Interest rates right now are very low, and it's an amazing tool for people to have. They use it to balance activity in their stock portfolio, preserve their stocks. They use it to bridge when they start taking Social Security. Someone might delay taking Social Security till they're 70 instead of 62 by using a reverse mortgage. There's some really smart economists out there that have run all kinds of studies that show how balancing someone's stock portfolio with in conjunction with a reverse mortgage can actually preserve the whole thing a lot longer into life. So it's fascinating stuff if you really dig into it.
And you had mentioned earlier, it's probably important, as I get older, I'm in my mid-50s now, and I'm starting to forget things. I always do the, where's my glasses, where's my cell phone kind of a thing. I imagine when I get older, it's only going to get a little worse. It would be helpful to have, say, my daughter there helping me understand and be in these meetings too. Do you encourage that, have other family members come in to meet with you, say, Donnie, and talk it all through?
Of course. I like to get everything out on the table, and show all the options and make sure everyone's educated and a well-educated borrower is a great client. That's the way to do it.
That sounds great. I'll tell you what, let's leave the conversation for this segment right there. We're going to take another quick break, but I do want to give out that phone number I'd mentioned because this is just an easy way to sort of get started. And I think you can hear it in their voices. This isn't a high-pressure thing at all. They want to make sure it's right for you and that it makes sense for you because they're not in business for just a year. They want to be in business long-term, and reputation is everything, I would imagine, in this industry. So here's that number, 206-766-8888. Again, 206-766-8888. And once you go there, just go ahead and push number 2. That'll take you right to the desk for reverse mortgages, and you can learn more that way. We're going to be right back with this edition of Coffee and Conversation right here on Kixie 880 and via podcast. I'm Eric Creamer, your host. We'll be right back.
If you have questions about reverse mortgages and whether they're the right option for you, please get informed before making any decision. One great way to get started is to log on to TILAmortgage.com. That's TILA Mortgage.com. And then click the Reverse Mortgage tab at the top of the page. Insurance and property taxes are borrower's responsibility. Powered by Hometown Lenders, MLS number 65084. Hometown Lenders Incorporated is an equal housing lender.
And welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. I'm in the studio with Donnie Little and Dave Wilson, both of TILA Mortgage. You've probably heard that name once or twice. They do a fair amount of advertising in the market, and they've been around a long time. And dare I say, they have a really solid reputation. That's why we're really happy to have both these gentlemen in and to specifically talk about reverse mortgages. Dave, reverse mortgages certainly seem, from what I'm hearing, to have their special place in today's housing and certainly the retirement landscape. Who would you say they're most right for?
Well, there's really two general categories that people fall into that do reverse mortgages. One is a needs-based model. That doesn't mean poverty or a loan of last resort or anything like that. It's simply picture a retired couple living on their Social Security, maybe a widow living on her Social Security. They don't have a lot of money to live a quality life or the life they want in their golden years. And yet, ironically, they're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity in their home. The reverse mortgage is a tool that allows them to easily access that money, safely access that money because they're limited to how much they can even borrow.
Right.
And again, the interest rates are at historic lows.
Right.
So it allows them to pull out some extra cash every month. The hot water heater breaks, they need a new roof, or they need to take a vacation or anything. It can be used for anything like that. So that's what it changes people's lives. That's what I like about doing this. And
I remember seeing that in our email conversation prior to this, is talking about how it can change people's lives. And that is probably my biggest fear is, okay, I have enough to survive, but isn't retirement about having a little fun too? Doing some traveling, that sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And so the second one I mentioned too, second one, and we touched on that in the last segment, is more of a financial planning tool. That's using it in conjunction with your retirement portfolio. And there's some real complexities in that. But that is one of the other things we see. To your question about what if they don't even have a mortgage, it's still a fantastic product.
Now, that's not just a CPA talking here.
No.
That's good. I had no idea about that. That's something I find really interesting. Do you counsel people in that situation on their financial planning, or is that something where you have to work in tandem with, their existing financial plan or something like that?
Well, I would just say that everybody is in a little different situation there. Some people work with an advisor, some people don't. Really, I'm not so much a mortgage guy as I am a, retirement planning and retirement income planner. So I think it's really important that you go over what's coming in, what's going out, who are the players in their life. Some people, they might want to help the kids now. Maybe they don't want to wait 20, 25 years until they pass to do something like that. There's just so many, things we can do.
That's a unique way of looking at it. And my grandparents were good that way. They wanted to make sure that they helped us with our own kids a little bit with college. They wanted to see that. They wanted to enjoy, the fact that they were helping their grandkids out. Instead of just this thing that would happen later on when they passed away. I wrote down really quick here, Donnie. It just keeps coming back to me. It's just sort of like house rich, cash poor.
Right.
And you're right. You're sitting on this nice piece of property, particularly in this area, and that's a lot of money there that could be spent helping your family, maybe enjoying your retirement a lot more, and not worrying, not having the stress. That shouldn't apply in my mind in retirement. It does seem to me, Donnie, that when you do things right, and when it's for the right person, that these reverse mortgages can really set them at ease. I mean, it could really change their life.
Absolutely. Even today, I have a client coming in, and really this is a situation where they have enough money to keep paying their payment. They can do it, okay? Mm-hmm. They can make their payment. But it's a cause of anxiety, right? And it's causing health issues at home. And so the spouse is really wanting, their mate to stop working and stop worrying. You can relax. You've put enough money into the home that you don't have to work anymore. You never have to, keep making that payment and working your fingers to the bone. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Mm-hmm. And, they will have a credit line for major expenditures and not have to continue to make that payment anymore. And without a reverse, yes, they have the payment every month, but also, where are they going to get the money for these other expenditures without, making big withdrawals out of the IRA, causing more taxes? And we just start going down, a whole list of issues.
Or having to move out, selling their property and going to something smaller or something where they may away from the kids or something, but further away that's not a choice they want to make.
And that's a great point. I think that's one of the first questions I'll ask anybody is, is this really a place you want to be for the next kind of indefinite future? Not everybody knows exactly where they're going to end up. But for the most part, is this where you want to be? That's a big issue. And if it is, then, that just shows that.
I think what I'm hearing here is that you look at the whole picture. It's not just a situation where you're there selling this product. You don't just walk in and say, "Here's the product." You're counseling with the people. You're learning about the particular situation. More importantly, I think you're learning about, okay, where do you see yourself going? I mean, if your goal is to stay in this house, this is a fantastic product for that. And let's go over those parameters. I do want to give out the phone number. I didn't do that as I came out of the last break. I want to make sure people have this. So if you're just tuning in and you've heard the term reverse mortgages, it kind of piqued your interest, I want you to just jot this number down, because both these gentlemen are wonderful at explaining the situation, how it works. It's not a pressure situation. It's just a chance to see if it's going to work for you or your loved one. I'm in a position where my wife and I help counsel my father-in-law, for instance, on certain things. So This is something that we would bring up to him in this situation. You might be in the same boat. Here's that phone number, 206-766-8888. Again, that's 206-766-8888. And then just push number 2, and it goes right to the reverse mortgage desk. Let's go back to the nuts and bolts, Dave, because particularly for anyone who's just tuning in right at this moment, what are the requirements to get into a reverse mortgage? And why the heck wouldn't they just, opt for a conventional mortgage?
Yeah, good question. And Donnie touched on that a little bit earlier. You have to be 62. It has to be your primary residence. Unfortunately, they don't let us take these out on vacation homes. I can imagine the wonderful market opportunities if that were allowed, but it has to be your primary residence. And that's defined as you live there more than 6 months out of the year. So technically 6 months and 1 day, that's your primary residence. So if you're a snowbird and you go somewhere else during the year, you're fine. So 62 primary residence, and then you have to have enough equity that the numbers work. And generally, it's 50% is a kind of a rule of thumb. The way it works is the older you are, the more they let you borrow. All of this is calculated via actuary tables and such. So somebody who's 62 and getting into it isn't going to be able to borrow as much as somebody who's 90 years old.
Right.
So that's
and
the
all
general
of that
requirement.
gets explained when you sit down.
And then to the second part of your question about a conventional refi, great question. If that makes more sense, we will recommend that. And that's one thing Donnie and I love about TILA is, there's significantly more conventional loan officers at TILA Mortgage than there are just the two of us doing reverse. But we have those folks sending us their conventional people once in a while saying, hey, this might work better for them because they couldn't qualify for a refi based on their income, or maybe their debt to income ratio didn't work. It's very mortgage world is very strict when it comes to debt to income ratios and ability to repay and all that on the conventional side. Likewise, if I have a client or Donnie has a client and it might make more sense for them to do a refi, we'll send them over to those guys. One unique thing about Washington State is loan officers have a fiduciary duty to their clients, which means we can't sell them just what we want to sell them. We have to sell them what's best for them. And it's one of the neat things about being a loan officer in this state.
Well, I'm looking at the clock here. We only have about a minute. So I'll tell you what, we've got a couple of questions, but I think we're going to save it for the next series that we're going to do. And we'll talk about security. Donnie, I want to learn more about how safe are reverse mortgages. Dave, I want to learn about, what about my spouse? Can they still live in the house? Should I pass away? And then finally, the heirs, and those issues and all of that. But we'll cover all that in our next podcast that we do and next show that we do on our local station here. But the bottom line is people can just call you and get that conversation, get all the answers to these questions and many, many more, ones that I haven't even thought of. So I'm going to give that number again, 206-766-8888. That's 206-766-8888. And then just selection number 2 to get you right there. Gentlemen, Donnie, Dave, thank you so much for coming in here with your expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're
really
honored.
appreciate it. And we've got more to talk about. I love that. I leave them wanting more, right? Well, we've got more coming your way in the next edition of Coffee and Conversation. I'm Eric Creamer, your host. Until we talk again, have a wonderful week.